9:15, 16. Just got now. Time for one more story. One more reminiscence in a rucksacks for goalposts kind of way. As we discuss John Carpenter's The Fog in tonight's 10-minute Memory is a Dream is a Memory by Edgar Allan Poe of My Mother Said You Could View This. Hello, and welcome to I might say I could watch it. I've just said that twice, but, I'm trying to broaden the algorithms and so on of this. Thank you for the bits, YOLO Yodels. Thank you very much for the people who've watched so far. I really, really appreciate it. Everyone appreciates attention, let's be frank. But I am pleasantly surprised. Today's episode is John Carpenter's The Fog. Classic in and of itself. Very traditional ghost story, complete with inconsistencies within its mythology. This isn't a nitpick episode, but there is stuff that occurred to me while watching this again properly for the first time. I've seen this film now a couple of times. Again, I would have seen this at about the age of 8 or 9. If I haven't made it quite clear yet in this, I have a brother who is 7 years older than me. And despite the fact that this would now make him over 50, that is still indeed the case. He is 7 years older than me. He just likes to make the gap a bit. 47, shut up. So he would have rented this and I would have tried to watch it and I'd have failed because it's a slow burner. It is a ghost story. The supernatural elements are all on the creepy, kooky and ooky side. The visceral moments are incredibly quick. There are no monsters, and the lack of monsters would have limited my attention span. This is the sort of era, again, of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, as a middle-aged man, I can understand that as being the breakdown of a marriage and one's masculinity and sense of identity in a world of material wealth. Back then, I was going, where are the ships? This is rubbish. Oh, that mash looks nice. So that is where I would have come to this initially. It's had a bit of a renaissance over the years. I did go and see this in the cinema about 3 years ago, before the event. And since the event, I've got to say that it's been a film that I've visited as a lovely, much like The Thing, in its own way. It's, as it occurs to me, almost a female-led version of The Thing. It's very much something that I've come back to as a warm thing, but when you actually follow the plot and the story of it, it's just so much more rewarding. The whole premise is about revenge on colonizers. That's ultimately it. It's didn't really occur to me until watching this again in light of recent social events. So I should just give a brief summary if it's been a while since you've seen the film. This is a small town that has been built and is about to celebrate its 100 years of its thriving cottage, almost Wivenhoe-esque lifestyle. For those of you who don't know Wivenhoe, it's a coastal seaport kind of place, very small, very parochial, just outside of Colchester. There you go. Colchester is the home of Blur, so you're absolutely fine. As the 100th anniversary is about to be celebrated, a series of innocuous events come where ghosts are basically haunting the town and killing people. Ostensibly quite haphazardly, intermittently, and with no real regard. Father Malone, who you've just seen there, behind me, is the grandson of the original Father Malone, whose diary shows that it was in fact a colony of lepers on a ship. They asked for clemency and a small island in order to live, and they were going to give gold to the founders of this town, the 6 founders of the town. The 6 founders of the town decided the best thing to do was sabotage them. Their ship got wrecked, all the lepers drowned, and then they stole the gold, which they have now hidden in the church. The film itself roughly follows a ghost story. It's largely innocuous events, but completely compounding on each other to just create unease and tension throughout the entire film. But there's a couple of things that really stood out for me watching it now. It's the fact that the women, and the reason why I said the thing about the thing, as I just did the thing the other day, really do drive the story in terms of the human element. They make up about half the cast of the main leads. In fact, all the blokes are pretty much shreddies. The 3 sailors, dead. Father Malone is probably the most important. Has some sense of exposition of what the hell is going on. Nick is a nice guy. Tom Atkins is a nice guy. And I suppose he's supposed to be the point of contact for us as the everyman lad watching the film. And if anything, at least he is part of the community as he starts to investigate what's happened to his friends on the ship. Elizabeth, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is just a foil. She's just a foil. She doesn't really add much. But Jamie Lee Curtis, I would say that she's incredibly charismatic. In terms of the story, absolutely extraneous. But you know what? There is nothing extraneous about having Jamie Lee Curtis on the screen. Her mother playing the mayor from Jaws, though, throughout this is phenomenal. She understands what's happening to a degree, as Father Malone explains the conspiracy and how everything we've seen is an absolute sham. Everything that she's taking pride in is a heresy on a level to be discussed. Her aide, Sandy, another Halloween alumni, Night Elizabeth acts as kind of a foil, but it really is her role as Kate, as the mayor of Jaws, that holds on one of the strongest characters in terms of the women and the leads, and in terms of simple dialogue, absolute dialogue and conversations of what to do, where you're going, and moving this forwards. But all of them pale in comparison to the wonder and the voice and the range of Adrienne Barbeau. Her role is amazing. It's a fully realized single parent owning a radio station on a lighthouse. And when you realize the importance of this, it really only struck how local radio at this point is the social media of the time. That is where all correspondence will go through. We laugh at talk radio now. People phoning up and going, well, you know what I should think is because it ruins my bins, right? As if that is the be and all of an entire country and a democracy. Yet, you know, her role as the DJ, as the narrator, as the commentator, envelopes and fogs and filters our entire perspective, even down to the fact that her son's a brat. It's wonderfully done. I do think, and I was speaking to my good friend and fellow cineast, Keith Thompson, as we were having one of our typical tit for tat conversations of trying to be more knowing than the other, in the way that men do, that just show that we can be. Any third party would find us absolute bores. I guarantee it. Is the pacing of it. I didn't really place much in the fact it has to be the 6. The 6 seem quite, in terms of the 6 people who die, you have 3 straight at the beginning. Father Malone, Mrs. Kropalski, and, you know, Steve, the radio weatherman. Yeah, that's the 6. They seem pretty arbitrary. The fact that Nick could have been one of them, but then the alarm goes at 1 a.m. and ghosts disappear. Now, ghosts disappear at 1 a.m., yet they can turn up and just possess a dead body and become a zombie in the middle of the day. That annoys me. That annoys me. No one ever says the rules of the supernatural. That's fine. But there has to be some consistency to the supernatural. for me just to have any engagement with what I'm watching. There's a point where if something's going to be so arbitrary, it might as well be a multiverse in terms of my lack of engagement with the characters. But to get back to Keith's very, very adroit point, it's the pacing of the film. The film could have been longer. I know, I hate saying it, but the film could have been longer. If there'd been a bit more time to breathe, I could have taken in the fact that there needs to be 6 deaths. Having said that, that would lose that element of doubt, or is this fog just going to kill everyone in the town? But it would have probably moved it more into a murder mystery than anything else. Now, I've seen the remake, and the remake links it in that 13 Ghosts way that everyone is an ancestor of one of the 6 conspirators. That in and of itself comes from the novelization of The Fog, because I did a little bit of reading after I did this time. But yeah, I would say The Fog holds up. If anything, it shows the importance of women within a community. It shows the role of agency and states within a community when you consider that it's a woman who's deciding whether or not this celebration should go on. The fact is, the town is now flooded. Pirates are it's Jaws. There's a Jaws element here. You can't ignore that. It's the sea. What's wrong with you? The arbitrary nature of whether or not something should be celebrated or derided. On a note of that, I am filming this. I can't help but think about the issues of slavers and statues. I myself visited the Founding Museum during Black History Month last October, and I do feel it's relevant because during that, the British Founding Institution was founded for the foundlings by slavers, and the whole point for Black History Month was about the children of color that they took in. At the time, they used this term I was unfamiliar with, really tawny. There would be no foundling society. Ostensibly, it could be argued that any notions of an adoption system and caring for children may not have existed without them. Yet, you cannot deny the fact that it was slavers' money that built it. They are around, and they are painted there. The founding displays itself were there as well, albeit in the basement, but I'll accept that maybe that's where all the events are held. And this could easily the absence of black actors in this is, I feel, more telling, and almost deliberately so, if it is supposed to be about the ancestors taking this, because ultimately you are talking about a story that could be told with an ancient Indian burial ground. This could be told with any sort of cursed sort of theft that's occurred. I think there's a lot that could have been built into the town from that. I really think that the concepts in it, particularly the whole idea of who needs to die, the return of gold, reparations versus revenge, could really have arguably been weaved into a very suspense-filled 2 hours with a few more characters and a bit more time to muse on that. Having said that, exposition, it's one of the few times I've argued for exposition, and this is why I'm coming up to 15 minutes on my normally 10-minute videos. Watch it, totally. I think this is one to watch with teenagers. I think there's a conversation going on here in terms of representation, reparations, gender politics, that this film could really open up with you and teenagers. I definitely want to watch. I would absolutely be happy, given that not long from now, to be watching this with my nephew and niece and being that guy. Okay, so it's on now until October the 1st. You're not keeping it to Halloween. I don't know what your problem is. Do check it out. If you haven't checked it out, do watch it and think along those lines. I think it's a valuable lesson for your own brain. Take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.